Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. Real Clear politics reporter Philip Wegman joins us, and Team Rising weighs in on Andrew Yang's new book deal.
But first, YouGov America has come out with a ranking of all 45 presidents of the United States, from worst to best. The information comes from a survey of 3,000 adults with various political affiliations. Let's take a look. Yeah, I love rankings of presidents, presidential history, trivia, that kind of thing. Millard Fillmore really so obviously what you notice first is that just the more better known the presidents, the better they're ranked. Millard Fillmore does not deserve his last place, but he's probably the hardest to actually ping what year he was even president in. I think it was like 1840 somewhere.
I mean,
there.
I want to know how they selected
48.
these people for this. How did they select the people for the poll? Were they like, okay, can you name all the presidents in order? I know, Robbie, you can name them all forward and backward in order, right? So did they have some sort of criteria for them to, because I look at this list and I think, I don't know nearly enough about all of these administrations to be ranking them from worst to best.
I mean, we know about the recent ones, right? We know.
Well, and I'm surprised Trump wasn't at the bottom of that list. That's what I'm actually surprised about. Like, why wasn't he right there?
Well, because he has rabid fans. I actually think the most overrated president on this list was John Kennedy, who polls very high and always polls very high in like every survey of presidents. He's revered. If you look at I mean, this is like boomer nostalgia, but if you look at like the JFK record, it's just not like he didn't get a lot accomplished. One of his major efforts was like beginning to ramp up Vietnam, almost causing like nuclear end of the world with Cuba and the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a big mistake. And then his personal life had a lot of moral failings. Not that that's the most important thing, but it was kind of covered up by the press and didn't come to light years later. I think he gets way too much nostalgia in my view.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that, looking at this, I'm just kind of taking a glance here. So Abraham Lincoln ended up being number one. So he was the highest ranked president.
Fair.
And John F. Kennedy, number two. George Washington, third. Theodore Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, Dwight Eisenhower, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Barack Obama, then right after, and then Ronald Reagan right after Barack, Truman, Biden. He hasn't even been president long enough to. But,
See, people are just voting for names they know, right? I was disappointed to see my favorite president, Grover Cleveland, down lower than he deserves. Grover Cleveland, another not well-remembered president during the very late in the 19th century, but was a Democrat who was very anti-war and anti-imperialist, but believed in low taxes and low regulation and minimal government involvement, which is my philosophy. So I have a lot of appreciation for Grover. Our only non-consecutive president, right? He won, and then he was out of power for 4 years, and then he ran again and won again. That's Grove.
Theodore Roosevelt almost, or did he? Did he have that? Did Roosevelt? Because he
ran
the
again.
Bull Moose.
Right. He ran again on third party. Had like the best third party showing, but no, he didn't win. I mean, they split the ticket, so that's how we get Woodrow Wilson, who is not my favorite president at all. I think Wilson is coming in for more ire among people these days, especially in our kind of racial reckoning. He was actually very not good, despite being a kind of progressive modern Democrat in some other ways in terms of like other policies. He was not at all good on racial issues.
Theodore Roosevelt actually at that time was way more progressive. I mean, he was definitely very hawkish when it comes to war. So he wasn't what I would consider progressive when it comes to foreign policy. But certainly on all of the other aspects, when you really study Teddy Roosevelt's his platform. So I actually really like Teddy Roosevelt just because I think he's the type of person that if we had today, we could kind of unite certain factions of the right and left together, sort of a populist movement, more of like I know people always kind of attribute progressivism with the left, but I actually believe that there could be progressive right. And so I really like him. So it's good to see him kind of higher up on the list, even though I'm very anti-war and, the guy was a big old war hawk. I get it, but. Nobody's perfect.
Woodrow Wilson, progressive Democrat, put Eugene V. Debs, the socialist candidate, in jail for being against World War I.
Yeah.
And Warren Harding, the conservative Republican, who everyone says is like the worst president ever, responsible for Teapot Dome, he freed Eugene V. Debs because that was a wrongful thing to do. So there's lots of, the popular history, not always correct. Sometimes, we have this, these were the good guys and these were the bad guys. It's usually more complicated than that. Maybe not for Washington and Lincoln we're learning like Jefferson is now has a more complicated legacy, obviously, because he's this very important founder with these very brilliant ideas, but also a flawed man who owned slaves and it is believed to have to fathered a child with his slaves. So it's complicated, and we shouldn't gloss over that stuff.
But important to point out, Donald Trump did end up almost smack dab in the middle on this list, just so everybody knows. Where did he end up? Right in the middle.
Which shows like why averages can be right. No one in the country thinks of Donald Trump as like, yeah, he was about average, right? That's a hard person to find. Either you think he's like literal Satan, Hitler, or Jesus Christ. Then there's very few people in the country who are anywhere in between that. But on average, that's where he ends up.
That's where he ends up.
All right. Thank you so much. More Rising right after this.